Welcome to our Ask an Expert show, where I invite a fellow professional in the US expat cross-border space to come in and talk to me about the issues we think Americans who are considering moving to Europe need to be aware of if they are going to thrive there. My guests today are Alex Ingrim and David Cantor. Alex is the president and co-founder of Liberty Atlantic Advisors, a wealth management firm guiding Americans through the complexities of living in Europe. And David is an experienced immigration attorney who is the founder of Relocate, which is a global migration marketplace, and who has also recently joined Liberty Atlantic. Furthermore, both of them are Americans living the dream, la dolce vita in Italy. So they have oodles of experience, both personal and professional, to share with us on all the things Americans should be considering, thinking about, and aware of if they are considering embarking on a European adventure of their own. So, without further ado, let's get into this. Hi, Alex and David. Welcome to Move to Europe.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you. As we start, will you introduce yourselves? Tell us an abridged version of your story.
I'm American. I'm originally from Alaska, grew up on the West Coast. I've been living outside the US for the best part of 17 years. It kind of all started when I met a girl studying abroad 17 years ago. So it's a pretty common expat story. Love has taken me kind of across Europe. So,
But from Alaska?
Yeah.
You grew up in Alaska?
Yeah, I'm originally from Alaska. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think you're the only person I know from Alaska.
Yeah, that's pretty common. Yeah. Although me and David have been on tons of calls with Alaskans recently.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Alaskans are looking to move to Europe.
Yeah.
En masse.
Yeah, I mean, 4 is en masse. So yeah.
It's a niche market.
Yeah.
20% of the
It's
population.
as niche as it gets. Yeah, so we have something in common immediately. But yeah, we've kind of, my wife and I have traveled around most of Europe together. We've lived in France, the UK, Italy, Malta. We've also lived in Canada. I finished up my studies in Canada. So we've traveled a lot together. I've worked in the European wealth management space for at least the last decade. And we've had Liberty Atlantic, which has served US expats living in Europe we've been working on this project for almost 3 years now.
Very cool. Very cool. So what about you, David?
Yeah. So an abridged version. I guess I consider myself a global citizen as well. I'm a New York native, so it's nice to be back here. I hung up a shingle at a law school. I was in Chinatown, did whatever work came across my desk, but I always knew I wanted to do something international, right? What does that mean in a career? How do you define that in a career? So I fell into immigration law. My wife's case was actually the first case that I ever worked on.
No.
Got her green card. Got her H-1B before that as well. But similar to Alex, I mean, love has taken us around the world. I mean, I met my wife in Shanghai at a cafe randomly, right, when I was backpacking. Uh-huh. And we've lived in international cities. We spent a decade here in New York. We kept going back and forth between Europe because her family also lives in Italy. They're originally from China, but moved in the 80s to Italy and then to Florence where they settled. So we're familiar, right? We had a couple kids and we were always looking over the pond. We knew it was there. We visited. And we decided to move in 2019, right before COVID. And we've been living in Florence ever since.
I love working with expats.
Oh, yeah.
They're or immigrants, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
They are bold, adventurous, open-minded people, and I like them. And so that's what I find most rewarding about it.
Yeah, on many levels, right? Because it's hard to even define what an expat is in many ways, right? Because there's just so many different idiosyncrasies to me.
Different stories, different motivations. And I think understanding the motivations is one of the most rewarding parts in the work that we do, because you get a unique view into how everyone's different and how their story has shaped them. And I think that's one of the really cool things about working in this immigration expat space is you get to meet people from a variety of backgrounds, but they all have this one thing in common, and it kind of binds us all together that we're risk takers in a way.
100%. US expatriation is having a moment right now, which is one of the reasons why we're having this conversation. And that means it's featured in a lot of newspapers and articles. And sometimes I will read those articles and think, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
You're moving for the wrong reasons.
There's a lot of noise out there too, right? So it's also about finding risk takers, but at the same time, you know, I've been in immigration for well over a decade, and the reasons and the catalysts for why people want to move is probably, to me, one of the most interesting, you know, subjects, especially now. and the conversations are pretty heavy. When I first moved to Italy, I was practicing U.S. immigration, right? I was a remote immigration lawyer. And it occurred to me, and this was over 5 years ago, that there's a kind of a blue ocean market, right? And this is before COVID, that there's going to be Americans who want to live in Europe. There's got to be, right? There are Americans here, right? But I feel like it's going to grow, And so that was about 6 years ago. And to see where it's come, how far it's come, it's light speed.
It's blowing up.
Right?
Yeah.
It's blowing up. We've chatted a lot. We kind of agree that there are many reasons to move. And specifically, we're talking about moving to Europe. And politics can be a reason, but we don't think it should be the reason. I'm sure there are exceptions. And also finances. We know money goes a lot further currently in Europe.
Yeah.
And that can be a factor. It's certainly nice when your money goes further, but we agree, and I'd be interested to know your take, David. That shouldn't be the motivating factor. You shouldn't be uprooting your life and moving to Italy just because your money go further. Great, that's a bonus, but it's got to come from a place deeper than that, I think.
You've got to be moving to something, right? You can't be moving away from something. You've got to be moving to something. And
Perfectly.
I think one thing that we really try to get people to focus on in the move is, what do you enjoy doing? What are your hobbies? Can you replicate those hobbies in Italy or in Portugal? Is there some real runway to build a sustainable life here for you for a 10 or 20 year period? Because it affects the work that we do as well. We don't want to create a plan for you that you abandon after 4 or 5 years to move back to the US. That's fine. We'll make sure that the plan works in that instance too, but it's not a best case scenario for anybody. So, we want people to move to Italy because they love art. They want to learn the language. They have a connection to the food or the heritage or the culture. We want people to move to Portugal because they like doing the outdoor activities that you can do there and almost nowhere else, right? Portugal is unique as a destination for some of those things. So there's a real fit to the place that you move to. You can't just throw a dart at a dartboard all the time or just move to a place for financial reasons. Actually, one of the biggest mistakes I think we see is people moving to a destination for only immigration reasons. We hear that all the time.
Just because I could get this visa there.
Because it's so much easier to immigrate to Portugal or Spain, or so they perceive.
Exactly. And this goes back to Americans being good at speaking to Americans, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Portugal is a prime example in the migration space of what a nation state probably shouldn't do within a migration policy. It was the first to market the golden visa, right? The investor visa for Europe. And it did so with astounding results that were basically too successful. So, in Portugal, you have pockets of American communities, really entrenched, right? Yeah. And Alex can speak to it.
Bubbles.
That are expanding. And in that expansion, sadly, pushing out, local communities, the kind of, infrastructure and authenticity that makes, a place local in many ways it's catering to tourists, right? And it changes. And that changes the vibe, it changes the experience. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a good or bad thing for people who may seek that out or expats who kind of crave something familiar. That's okay, right? And there's more of that in Europe than I think there's ever been, and I think we'll continue to see that grow and evolve. But there needs to be a balance, I believe, right? So when Alex is talking about these ideal clients that have a genuine interest in the language or genuine interest in the culture, that sensitivity goes a long way when you're moving somewhere and just for your own life, right? You know this as well, I'm sure, in your own experience. So I think, just to sum that up from a migration lens, what Portugal did wrong, the real estate prices, for example, went skyrocketed, right, to prices that are not European. And it pushed out locals, right? They can no longer live there. And while in one way it's great, it can contribute to the local economy. People are going and shopping. But at the same time, there needs to be something that's called sustainable migration in the back of people's minds, right? And what that means, I don't know.
So would you go as far as say you think Portugal are doing it wrong? And where do you think are doing it right?
Well, you can even look at the processing times now. And Italy's almost getting there for different reasons. Meaning, if you were to try and go to get a visa for Portugal, or you're on the road for citizenship, it's going to take you an extended period of time beyond what the regs say. And even to get an appointment, for example, at a consulate, to get a visa is challenging. For Italy, for example, as well. New York, you can't find a date on the Prenotoro, which is like the online system. You have to check every day almost to try and find a free slot to get a visa appointment at the consulate. So from a processing lens, the governments can't handle it. They just don't have the resources, the infrastructure that's even ready to cater towards that. I think, other nations can learn from Portugal in many ways because it basically imploded. To a certain degree, right?
Yeah. I think from my perspective too, having lived in Europe for so long and seen how different countries deal with migration, the issue from my perspective with Portugal is there's a benefit to Portugal to having people take this route, take the golden visa, investment migration. So they receive money, whether it's in terms of people buying property, whether it's in terms of people investing in infrastructure projects or donating to cultural projects. But where's that money going to? What's the trickle down effect of all of this? Is it helping the average local person? Are there entrepreneurs from Portugal that are building businesses around this? Or is it being bottlenecked in a few key industries that are tangentially related? So is it lawyers that are just doing really well out of this? Yeah. Is it tax lawyers that are doing really well out of this because they can sell it? Are there, we call them golden visa agents?
Yeah, migration
agents that do really well out of it.
Is that what's happening in Portugal? It's very localized. It's not trickling down.
I feel like there's very little trickle down effect. Whereas some of the countries that have these investment migration regimes, there's more trickle down, whether it's because they're smaller countries like Malta, or because they're really specific and targeted. So Italy does a really good job with their tax regimes, being very specific and targeted in how you can take advantage of them. Portugal, with the non-habitual residency tax regime, you can make it applicable to almost anyone. So not only were people coming in with the golden visa, then they were getting huge tax breaks. And you didn't have to use the golden visa to get the huge tax break. So that's where it just compounded the lack of sustainability within the programs.
Attention's rising in Portugal.
Oh, yeah.
Are they?
Yeah. I mean, for years now.
Because from an outsider, it's like kind of outsider to this, I'm looking at thinking Portugal seems to be the place. Like I'm seeing interest in Europe rise dramatically, but specifically Portugal.
The tensions are rising. There are protests about the cost of living, the cost of housing. As more people are becoming aware of what the tax incentive programs like non-habitual residency were, they were wondering why someone who's foreign, who's coming in, doesn't have to pay, capital gains tax on a foreign property transaction, but they would.
It's a fair question.
Right. These are all totally fair questions. And then the cost of living is going up for them, for the local people. Yeah. They're the ones paying the full tax rate. And then as they perceive, foreign people that are coming in, driving up the cost of living, are the ones that are not.
Yeah. And it's a balancing act, right?
Yeah,
because nations, they're basically trying to attract Americans. They're trying to attract expats, global citizens who will contribute to the economy, right? And they create tax incentives for that.
And they do contribute to the economy.
And they
absolutely
do.
And they do bring something.
It's a balancing act, though, right? Because a similar example in Italy, there's a process called jus sanguinis, right? It's basically ancestry by descent. If you have an Italian grandfather or grandmother or great, somewhere in your lineage, you can trace back to Italy, which Brazil, Argentina, America are the largest, and the UK are the largest markets for that, right? There's a diaspora of Italians in history that have migrated to these countries. And so you can actually get an Italian passport just by having a bloodline. And that has picked up over the last 5 to 7 years. And there's an outstanding amount of people who are pursuing this pathway. However, there's political backlash internally in Italy, right? You have a right-wing conservative government that's basically passing new regulations to make it more difficult. The timelines are getting longer to get a passport. And the reasons for doing so, some are, make sense. For example, there's a small town in Molise. It's famous for marketing the €1 homes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which we can talk about as well. It's an interesting phenomenon. I actually met the €1 guy. I was like, I got to know what's going on here. So I met him. But there's more Italian passport holders that don't live in Molise, right, than there are actually people, locals, right, in their town. So it's a balancing act, right, to figure this out, because it's not going to stop. The stream of migration is never, it shouldn't.
So if I'm an American listening to this, thinking, you know what, I've thought about this, but I've always just thought, it's going to be too hard. And I know there's investor visas, there's digital nomad visas, there's retirement visas, there's most of the time, is there always a way? Or
I would say yes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, the immigration frameworks in each of these respective countries are, France is likely the most complex in a good way, meaning there's pathways.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And so when you're talking about that individual who's kind of agnostic in a way, right, where they're just spinning the globe and they're actually, that's a different kind of conversation, right? They're looking for different kind of support from you and different type of advice, even from those who have lived the experience, right? So that kind of is invaluable in having many of these client conversations. And it's kind of fun, but at the same time, bears a lot of responsibility when you're actually feeling like you're dictating where somebody might go. Yeah. Maybe they have a family, right? Maybe they have children. Yeah. And, you grow comfort with that as you continue to practice and have these conversations. I think that's what drives each of us personally, right? Is conversations and dealing with people. There is always a way, immigration-wise.
That was a question. Right? Is there, if I want to go to France, I can go to France.
Yeah.
I don't know how yet, but I can go to France.
Yeah. It's probably the best example.
Even though my British passport is significantly devalued after 2016, which I will never forgive them.
But I think that France might be the best example.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, no, my wife has a UK passport, so I'm in the same boat. France might be the best example, right? Like David said, a lot of complexity. But what we've seen over the last probably 5 years since COVID is countries, and this is where it's really interesting from a philosophical standpoint, right? Countries are increasing the ways that you can move there. They're not decreasing the pathways. Italy is not making it harder to move there. Maybe harder to get a passport, but not harder to move there.
Are you at risk though that one day they just change their mind? Right, right now they're opening up, they're welcoming Americans, and you go there and you set up life. Is there a real risk? I mean, there's everything's a risk, but is there a real risk that there's a regime change?
It's called reciprocity, right? In the immigration space, you call it reciprocity. It's basically saying, this is how you treat visas for our nationals. Here's how we're going to treat visas for your nationals. I mean, the ESTA is a simple example, right? Europeans need to get an ESTA, which is, it's not a visa, it's a visa waiver to travel to the United States. It's an online application, right? Now, recently, as of I think late last year or something, Americans need to do that. They need to go through ETIAS, right? For Europe. So that's just a small example of being like, listen, if we're going to build up more walls here in America, make things more difficult, I wouldn't be totally surprised in the concept of reciprocity if other countries start to do these similar things. But at the same time, as we were saying, Europe is looking to attract individuals from all over the world. Europe as a continent, I would say we're approaching a new renaissance. I like to say that. I'm optimistic. I mean, there's an aging population there, right?
Optimism isn't naive, it's strategic. There you go.
Yeah, it's a light that doesn't go out.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you guys I would love to hear how Alex, and your thoughts on this as well, but in Europe in terms of where can it go, right? I mean, there are aging populations. There are towns that are basically beautiful towns, one after another, all scattered throughout Europe, right? You could spend multiple lifetimes in Italy alone, that are just in need of fresh, new, whether it's talent.
Yeah, people. Just people. Give us your people.
Yes. Right. But we had a great conversation that went on air about your experience. I don't know if you want to share that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you solve that. No amount of immigration is going to solve what you experienced. If these beautiful but almost cut off towns can't open the horizon.
Through time.
I think it starts with the cities. So what we were talking about before we came on air is that integration's a two-way street. So you can try really hard to integrate into culture, linguistically, just to be a part of society. But if you're not accepted as an individual or as a family, you're not going to be able to integrate completely. You have to have someone there waiting for you with open arms. And so, we've lived in many big cities. We first immigrated to Italy, to Florence. Then we thought we'd buy a house in a beautiful village outside of Lucca, and moved our family there, remodeled the house, kind of one of those
live the dream,
Tuscan dreams, right? Pretty small village, less than 500 people. And, just the integration was so hard. Even for people from the next village away, it was very hard for them to integrate into that village's culture and society. Yeah. I mean, we had one of the other moms at school was from Lucca, which is less than 5 miles away, let's say, than the village we lived in. And she told my wife, I've lived here for 16 years. I married someone from the village. My son goes to school. He's in the same grade as our son. And after 16 years, they still won't talk to me because I'm from Lucca.
It's terrible.
Because it's 5 miles away. It's so different to them.
It just shows,
right?
We were saying, human nature is universal. And I don't know how you solve this, because I just imagine, just assuming these people are people like everyone else, I imagine they also complain and moan that they're getting left behind.
Absolutely.
And they're forgotten. And yet when someone new comes to town, they basically shun them. And you're like, well, how much of this is your own responsibility? How much of this, it's just, I don't know how we're not going to solve this in this podcast. Right?
No, it's great to chat about, right? Because it gets to the heart of it, also the experience of moving somewhere, right? And on your personality as well, like how far do you want to go to immerse yourself, right?
That's a great question. Yeah, no, because I think you have to be very aware of your own limitations. And in that case, we're living in a small town. It's me, my wife, and our 2 kids. We don't know that many people in town. And we're limited in what we can do. I had to work. My wife was driving the kids up and down a mountain to go to school every day. Just the basics are hard in a small Italian village. It's not easy to go grocery shopping. It's not easy to get the refrigerator fixed or whatever it is that takes up bandwidth. So I think one of the things that you underestimate if you've never done it before is the bandwidth it takes to integrate. Even when it's the same language, I'm sure you can speak to this. When I moved to the UK, Canada was actually the biggest surprise for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to adjust to a new culture and integrate and learn new things.
I think you go
you're
in
Alaskan, that's fine.
Yeah, it's true.
You go in with a totally false sense of security is the wrong word, but you think, oh, I know this place. They speak the same language, and you really don't. Some of it's quite subtle, but it's very different.
It's very different. And so then when you add the language on top of that, and then the bandwidth it takes to integrate, you have to know your limits. So my wife and I said, look, we can do Florence. We can live in Florence. We can't do the village. We can't raise kids in a village. We can raise kids in Florence. If we want to have that village life, sure, we'll go back to it one day.
Yeah.
This is why you guys are so fantastically positioned for what's going on right now, because we'll get into it in a second, but being a US-connected expat / immigrant financially is a minefield. So for me, that's expats in America, but same for Americans abroad, for things we'll get into. It's an absolute minefield. So the value you can bring in helping people navigate the minefield is tremendous. But then the fact that you both have lived this, the fact you bring your personal experiences to bear, and you can stop someone making a terrible mistake. No, sorry, terrible mistake is not the right word, because what you did in going and living, that's not a terrible mistake. That was part of the experience, and you learn from it. And but you can bring your personal and your professional knowledge and experience to bear, and that's quite a
no doubt. I mean, it makes the conversations genuine, right? And Alex spends countless hours speaking with, different clients every single day. And the conversations, they similar to this, they just take a natural course. Similar to me. I mean, I have client conversations all the time. That you can never really predict where it's going to go. And you're providing a service in that conversation as well, without even realizing it, right? Based on the experiences, the lived experiences. And it's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah. So we've established, look, if there's a will, there's a way. You can get there. If you want to go to France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, whatever, if you want to go, we can get there, right? Financially, though, What do we need to be? What do Americans be thinking of, aware of? What are the challenges?
Yeah, so I think the really unique thing about being American and moving to Europe is that when you're American, you always carry with you your U.S. tax liability by virtue of your citizenship.
Do you find everyone knows this, or are you still the person to break that to people?
No, I would say 2 or 3 years ago, it was half and half. Now most people are aware that are going through the inquiry process.
And are they aware that a lot of it is not necessarily the tax burden, but it's more the restrictions and the challenges of tax years not matching up and not being able to invest in most things and difficulties opening bank accounts? Are they aware that it's more the administrative hassle rather than the tax burden that's the problem?
No, they're not. Okay. They're not. That's all still new. You have to live that to understand what it means. Because if you go to HSBC and say, hey, I'm American, I'd like to open up a bank account, they'll go, oh yeah, we got a process for that. Just, fill out these extra forms. You've got to do this W-9. Okay, great. You submit it. You don't have a bank account for another 6 months because they don't know how to process the application, right? They don't know what to do with the W-9. There's all these nuances of being American that don't exist for anyone else.
I've heard a tax attorney describe being an American abroad as akin to having a disability. Now that's strong, but just to give, that was as an international tax attorney. So that's pretty heavy language.
We don't think of it that way at all, actually. We think of it as, how can we turn this into an advantage? So one of the best examples is the US and France have a really unique double taxation agreement. It's incredibly beneficial to a US citizen. A US citizen in France in retirement will pay far less taxes than a British citizen in France in retirement. So that's the way that the treaty works. The UK treaty is not advantageous to the Brits. The American treaty is very advantageous to the Americans in France.
Oh, wow. And an important note here, we're talking about moving to Europe.
Yeah.
But Europe is not like, Europe is individual countries with individual treaties. And for those who don't realize, in the cross-border space, so much comes down to the treaty. So much comes down to the individual tax treaty that country has with the US.
Yeah.
And that's the world we live in.
Absolutely. So it makes certain countries an outlier, right? Where Americans can take what would be a disadvantage and turn it into an advantage.
This is a great take. Okay.
So we always look for that opportunity. Working in Italy is another one. We have a very unique totalization agreement between the US and Italy. It's even unique amongst the American agreements. So if you're American and self-employed, you can still pay into Social Security in the US, even though you're working in Italy. There's all these really neat nuances and intricacies that mean we say that there's an asset base or situation for each country. So if you came to us and said, let me describe to you what my asset base is, we could actually tell you in a lot of instances, you know what, you're a really good fit for Spain.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, this put you on the spot and might be oversimplifying it, but France has a great treaty.
Yeah.
Italy has a great treaty.
Yeah.
Spain? I've heard mixed things about Spain.
No. So Spain is, if you think of Spain as a country, it's like the US in that the tax system is regional. It's region by region, like we're state by state. So if you look at Catalonia, where Barcelona is, it's much different than Madrid. Okay. So you're looking at polar opposites. Catalonia is the California of Europe. It's probably the highest tax destination. Madrid is low tax for Spain.
Wow.
So it's impactful with the wealth tax. It's impactful with succession tax. For a lot of Americans, you might not realize or understand that you could be liable to a wealth tax in Spain.
I've heard. Yeah. And that can be pretty devastating, can't it? Do you find people are DIYing this? Are you finding people? Yeah, always the case.
Always
DIY, destroy it yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think it's bad enough. Like, look, we're recording this at a time of pretty severe market turmoil.
Yeah,
and it's and I'm spending time on Reddit and reading the media, and people are just blowing up their financial plans. It's bad enough in the normal world, in the cross-border world.
Oh, I love it when people do this in immigration.
I just don't. Yeah. The mentality, I think, that people have to have. It's one thing if you don't have enough money, right? But if it's when people with means who can afford advice tackle this immigration or cross-border stuff,
Yeah.
financials on their own, and the state that the repercussions are significant and unavoidable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have people that regularly come to us, and this is extremely common now with Portugal and Spain, not so much France or Italy, but they'd never even looked into the tax side of a move, and they're already pretty far down the line.
They've not moved.
No, we do get some people occasionally that have
and
moved.
it's never occurred to them to think about tax. It's like, wow,
No,
we still got work to do.
One of the most, I think, interesting and palpable value adds of a call, like with Alex, for example, the first instance call, is people realize what they can do with what they have. That they didn't think, I couldn't actually move. I didn't think I could move to France until 5 years later. Or, I didn't think I could live that lifestyle. Alex has been in calls where he's like, listen, with an existing client, I think, you should maybe purchase a business class ticket instead, right? Mm-hmm. Enjoy that.
Yeah, we do.
Because you do have.
Yeah. Turn left, don't turn right. You don't need
turn left, right?
Yeah.
And go maybe do it a couple times.
Yeah.
Right? So it's interesting. I actually find Americans to be more prepared than not in most cases, right?
I've worked with many clients from many cultures.
Too prepared.
Americans are more conscious financially than many other cultures. What I think we're unconscious of as a society is what exists outside of our borders, and what other nations' rules are and how they are different. So that just because you have to pay or you have to file US taxes, it doesn't mean that you're absolved from Spanish taxes.
Honestly, it never even occurred to me. I thought we were going to talk about PFICs and FATCA forms. The idea that someone would think that filing US taxes as as an Italian resident or French Spanish would absolve them for that it blows my mind.
One of our kind of common sayings is actually, going back to the PFICs or FBARs or whatever it may be, you don't have a US tax problem. You have an Italian tax problem or a Spanish tax problem or a Portuguese. So a lot of the talk, there's been recent talk about ending citizenship-based taxation. That doesn't affect most Americans that live in Europe at all in any way.
It's an administrative burden.
That's
not a tax burden.
They'll save, a few $100 a year in filing taxes. They are still going to pay the same effective tax rate in Italy or Portugal or Spain, because that's the way the treaty is written, and that's where their primary tax liability lies.
Right, so an American comes to you, they're moving to Europe.
Yep.
We don't know where yet in Europe, or even if we do. What do you start doing? How do you prepare them for this move?
So we first want to find out what the motivations are. So we just start off with a simple, tell me your story. Give me some context to the move. Why are you moving? And then we see where that conversation takes us. We want to have a really open-ended conversation to find out more. Then it usually transpires that someone either has a very clear purpose for moving to a country, or they have no purpose at all and they would like to look at several different countries, but they just heard that Portugal's nice or Spain is nice. One thing I love about Americans that are looking to move abroad is just how open-minded they are. So there is a lot of, hey, I like Spain, but I like France. Do you want to tell me which one might be better financially? And so then we have that conversation. If someone's really locked in on Spain, okay, we start to have that conversation. But this work, it takes a lot of nuance and conversation to draw out what's important to the client, but also what could be impactful from a planning perspective. So we usually take about 3 meetings with a prospective client to understand why they're moving, where they would like to move to, what their asset base is, and then how we can help.
You actually do a model?
Yeah.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. So we do a lot of modeling around it so that we could compare Spain versus France. And we show people with data points, hey, this is the difference.
Really? So you've got an awareness of the tax rates, and you'll manually input the tax rates, I assume, and make assumptions. Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. So we can say, look, the wealth tax is going to impact your plan by this much, right? Just to give people a ballpark idea so that when they're talking about and they're comparing within their household, hey, should we move to Spain or France? And you're like, well, I really like, the common ones like, the Basque Country. I really like the Basque Country. Okay, that's in Spain and France. So, you know, if you're going to choose one, France is probably a lot better.
Right.
You know, same with Catalonia. There's a French Catalan side. So it's really interesting to make these comparisons and allow people to, we say it's your threshold for pain. What's your threshold for pain for being in one country versus another? Is it $50,000 a year in added taxes? Is it 100? Because those are real numbers. It can be that much.
Can you do this for all European countries, or just
no? We look at the countries that we specialize in and where we have tax partners, right? So like tax lawyers that we trust to say, hey, give us an idea of how this would be taxed. So usually Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Malta, and occasionally Belgium. So we look at those.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, again, I'm very new to the financial world, but I've sat in enough of these conversations with Alex that the information that the clients get at the end of the day, and also their reactions, like you see their reactions, just by having 3 conversations, the amount of of savings from a financial planning lens, because you're taking into consider the double taxation treaties, how they communicate to each other. You're also taking into consideration the client's goals, right?
Just imagine not doing this. Imagine not having
I feel like most don't, right? Because,
no, totally.
I mean, you guys would know better than me, but you have this kind of and this gets to how people define wealth management and working with a financial planner. And I think we're entering a new era of what that is in this cross-border space, right? Because I see this equally as important to making friends in the expat community. Right? Having a financial planner that you probably call too much. Alex gets probably too many calls, not just about finance advice, you know, about many things, about everything. And so I think we're seeing a bit of a new breed here emerge at a pretty timely moment, right? But like something as simple as like, hey, you shouldn't keep all your funds in an IRA because it doesn't have favorable tax treatment in this country. Yeah. Or you shouldn't be invested in these assets because that's going to be taxed at income and not capital gains. Or, you know, so these like nuances that are, you know, pretty black and white for Alex. He's been doing this for you know, as a seasoned cross-border financial planner, but never occurred to a US-based financial planner that they currently have.
Yeah. No chance.
It's kind of shocking. And you're talking about, and people take this very seriously when you talk about money and their savings.
Here's the thing. I am an expat financial. I'm a cross-border financial planner. Yeah. We do this for expats in America, but there's stuff that you're doing that I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know what to do, even within the cross-border world. So if someone's coming from if you're a wirehouse advisor or you're a guy somewhere, no chance.
I think one of the other really important things, as we're going to see more firms move into this space, and something that I want to see more, and we see it occasionally, but probably not often enough, is for everyone in the US financial planning community to understand that you have to pick a corner in this. You have to say, I do Spain and the US, or I do France and the US. You have to have the language skills for the country that you serve. So we focus on those 4 countries because we happen to have an advisor that's Portuguese, that speaks fluent Portuguese, fluent Spanish, and fluent English. We work in France and Italy because I went to business school in France. My French was very, very good. It's still pretty good. We have a great French tax lawyer we work with who's bilingual. Our Italian's really, it's pretty good. We probably sell ourselves short. So we have the language skills in every country. You can't do Portugal from the US but not speak Portuguese. Yeah. Right? That's the really important thing, is if you're looking at entering this cross-border world, which more and more people will, and I get inquiries about it all the time from young people aspiring to do it, which is amazing. And that's also another great sign of where all of this is headed. Start with one country and then go from there. If you love France, start with France. Some things will be applicable to Italy. Actually, almost none, but some principles will be, and then you can expand. And that's how we started kind of envisioning all of this. Is I had a career where I worked in Spain and France and Portugal, so I was aware of what all of that looked like. We picked these 4 countries consciously. It's important for the consumer and the advisor to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. As we wrap up here, you know, when someone is leaving the US, obviously the financial planning thing sounds invaluable, especially if someone's like comparing countries. But do you have to like restructure their assets?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that dependent on where they're going?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So Portugal is different than Italy, which is different than France. It's all completely different. And this is really what makes it interesting, but it's what makes it challenging, is understanding the pitfalls with each country. So I think I mentioned, we always say that there's a right asset base for each country. And so it's about transforming what you have to fit the country that you're going to. And not only looking at the double taxation agreement, but then you have to look at the domestic tax rules as well and say, okay, do I fit into those with what I have? It's about, can you take advantage of any of the tax regimes, like the 7% regime in Italy?
I'm always coming at this from landmines, what risks are there? But there are absolutely opportunities within, you've already talked about one in France with the IRA or your retirement accounts.
Yeah.
But there are opportunities as well. When you say restructuring assets, are we talking at like the fund level, or are we talking at like insurances and retirement accounts?
We're talking about at a tax wrapper level. So is something pre-tax like a 401k or an IRA? Can we make distributions to make it post-tax, pay the tax on it in the US at a significantly lower tax rate than it would be in Portugal, Spain, or Italy?
Okay, yeah.
Are we looking at it at your actual individual holding level, where is an American mutual fund really that tax efficient in Italy or Spain? And if not, what do we need to do to get out of that? If you have a huge capital gain in your portfolio, should you pay US capital gains tax before you move to Portugal? Because Portuguese capital gains tax is 28%. So what little incremental savings can we make now that have a big impact in your plan later?
So in the UK, we have the reporting and non-reporting fund regime.
Yep.
So you want to be in reporting funds. Do similar regimes exist in the other countries? So when you mention mutual funds, you don't want to have a mutual fund in France, say, that kind of...
Italy's probably the biggest one for this. Italy has almost the exact same thing as the UK non-reporting funds regime or the US PFIC regime.
Also, you've got to be really careful.
You have to be really careful. So in Italy, like you really need to restructure at a tax wrapper level and then at an individual holdings level.
And then avoid collectives? Like
yes.
Get into direct individual...
Get into direct,
wow, okay,
direct holdings.
Extreme.
I mean, it's what we would advise anyone going into the UK as well. It's easier to manage. And you can manage, it's actually more tax efficient in the US to use things like direct indexing. And that holds true, but is even more impactful in Italy because the capital gains tax rate's higher. So there's some really interesting nuances to all of this, but that just shows the level of detail you have to go into. We've had countless people call us saying, my Italian accountant just charged us 43% on our gains from our US ETFs. And we're like, yeah, that's what happens. That you can read the law that way. Yeah. If it was individual stock portfolio, you'd pay 26%, and you can't offset losses and all the things like in the UK, right?
Yes, if anyone, just people seek advice. People seek advice. You said you clients in your 60s. What is the average age, do you reckon, of the people that you see?
Skewing lower, that's for sure.
It's a garden variety.
Yeah, it's probably around 60 now. We're getting more families, which is fantastic, because that's
families in their 40s, parents in their 40s or 50s or
40s.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's getting younger and younger. Yeah. So historically, you've seen people who are basically at retirement.
Yeah, or early retirement, maybe mid 50s to mid 60s.
Yeah. I mean, we've even had conversations recently with those who are in their upper 30s.
Yeah, right? Really.
Yeah.
See, for me, who I'm kind of trying to reach the most with this is, I mentioned to you before, there's this quote I love: America is a business, Japan is a nursing home, Europe is a museum. Yeah. And I think I serve primarily expats in the US, helping them make the most of their financial opportunity that is coming here. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity for people who have spent 30 years grinding it out in the business, which is a great opportunity, but it's stressful living in a business, right?
Yeah.
For them to, the twilight of their career, rather than just grinding out another 10 years, going and having an adventure, not necessarily retiring totally, but just going and having an adventure that might be a permanent adventure, might be a temporary adventure, who knows, and just experiencing that. I think they're already successful, already wealthy, spent 30 years working. There's an opportunity for them. Kids maybe, at college, finishing college, going and having that last 10 years, just
having those conversations are so refreshing. Both sides, right? Listening to individuals who are like, you can tell, they're ready for this. But it also gives a lot of weight to these conversations because you also realize they have grinded it out for 30. This is their life.
Are you seeing that profile? That profile, I kind of, is that what okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just a thing I imagine, it's real.
No, it's there.
It's always been there too.
Yeah.
The one that's different now is, and this is indicative of how much the space is growing, is I want to raise my kids in Europe. That, I think, is the one that's growing. And it's becoming more doable because the immigration pathways are there, because the countries want families. They really want families. Italy, Spain, they want families. They're prioritizing that.
It's so interesting to hear you say that. So I've got my kid in a French-American school in New York. And it's because my kids are American. We're raising them American. And I live in a fantastic school district. But one, I want them to be bilingual.
Yeah.
And two, I want them to be brought up in America with American values, but also I would like them to be exposed to European values. Now, we talked before. I've been out of the UK and Europe for 13 odd years. I look back with a very rose-tinted perspective. I kind of idealize Europe, so I know it's not the bastion of progress and liberalism and equality that I perceive it to be in my head. But still, I do think there is something about European values, and I kind of want my kids to have the best of both worlds, be brought up in America with American values, but also exposed to a second language and Europeans and European values.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's so much to say for that. That's what I know. I'm doing that with my family. David is with his.
Yeah. It's incredible. My daughters are completely bilingual now, right? And when I try to speak Italian at the table, they're like, "Papa, perché parli italiano? Why are you speaking Italian?"
I get screamed at.
It's so genuine, So now I just speak American at the table.
Yeah.
That's it.
Guys, we've covered a lot. It's been great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Do you have, is there anything, reflecting on your journeys, anything, put you on the spot here a little bit, aren't I? But anything like you wish people had told you, wish you're aware of, or any specific advice for anyone who's sat at home? This has been like a pipe dream, but they've never seriously considered it. Anything you'd say to them?
Yeah, I could say something. It's kind of goes to a fundamental level of how, I try to live. And it's an equation, I see. And one part of that equation is uncertainty. I've always had uncertainty as part of that. And that to me has been one of the most exciting elements, right, to this life equation, because it's opened up doors, right? You continue to move. Even if your family continues to grow, you can still move with that family. You can have an education at home, and the world can also be that education. So if there's anyone out there that's just thinking about it, just take an extra step, speak to somebody, gather information, but don't gather too much information because there is a lot of noise. It's an overload, right? You can go down the rabbit hole.
Oh, for sure.
Right? So seek out trusted advice, and the pieces will fall together. Uncertainty is always an element, but could be the most fun.
For me, it's just don't let life happen to you. You have to put things in motion. You have to take control of your own life and see the things that you want to come to fruition occur because you did it. And I think if someone would have told me that, in my early 20s, that, okay, if you want to live in Italy, you've got to go do it yourself. You got to push your boundaries. You've got to be uncomfortable. Then, I would have been even more of a risk taker than I already am, which is probably a lot anyway. But, it's really, I realized on my own expat journey that I was the driver at some point. And once I realized I was the driver, it all became easier.
Was your wife always totally on board?
Oh, yes. Look, I've lived in 6 countries. She's probably lived in 8. Right. She left home at 21. I left home at, 19 as far as leaving our countries. So she's probably as restless as I am or more. But
do you have it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Okay, good. Do you have it?
What's that?
I always want to be moving. I've done 3. Okay. I've been in the house I'm in now. It's the longest house I've been in since I graduated, since I was at home, a childhood home. And I'm just itching. I have to override it because now I've got family and you got school and I'm here for the foreseeable. But I could do 2 years and I just want out. Not because there's anything wrong with it. I need to go somewhere else and do something else.
My kids have it. My kids are like, so when are we moving? And I'm just like, guys, come on, like, don't tempt me. I'm the last person you should tempt.
And that is one of the incredible things about Europe too, right? I mean, you can just go 3 hours in one direction and you're in a completely culturally different place.
So cool, that.
Right?
It's so amazing. Again, as a Brit, never took that totally for granted. And then, because I just, I could be in Paris in an hour, Rome in 3 hours, et cetera, et cetera.
Remarkable.
And then when that was gone, you're like, oh, that is one thing I took for granted. And another thing is walkable towns and cities.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I just assumed everywhere was walkable, and it's just not the case.
No. And it's so refreshing not having to drive. I mean, it can bother you from day to day, but I don't miss it one iota.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, chaps, where can people find you?
So the best place is probably just our website. So libertyatlantic.com. So go on there. We have a contact form. You can get in touch with us and just check out what we're about in the countries that we serve.
Okay.
And come visit us.
Yeah, come visit us, definitely.
Anywhere in Europe.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, listen, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a masterclass. We've gone everywhere.
Likewise, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Should we go and get a beer?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. You need to, I'm itching to move to Rome right now. So talk me off a ledge or talk me over it.
Get them ready.
All right, cheers, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.